Welcome to my Wyvern 13 one-shot compendium for 2022. In this video I'll be discussing 6 different teams. The first team will be a no RNG one-shot team. That's right, no fail conditions other than your internet going out or the game crashing. I'll follow that up with a second no RNG team, a little bit slower, but it doesn't require any limited units. And speaking of limited units, next I'll run 2 traditional one-shot teams without using Seaside Bologna, though she could be substituted in. And though it's difficult to run a one-shot team without her, the 5th team will have no sinful Angelica. The 6th and final team will be my personal favorite. It's the fastest clear, it's not 100% guarantee, but it's very close. Usually I get 60 to 70 runs before I have a fail, and it's easily the fastest team in Epic 7. I debated whether or not to put this team first because it's a bit discouraging once you see the gear requirements. This is the 100% one-shot team. This is not a team you will ever keep, I think. You will build this in Fribbles and save the loadout and then bring it up whenever there is an unequip event. The team is headlined by Conqueror Lilius. I put my Conqueror Lilius on a rage set for some damage simply because I needed a little bit of extra help on the damage. My rem just isn't quite strong enough for this without it. I put her on Warhorn, that's important for her to cut, and she needs to be no faster than 220 speed and no slower than 200 speed. In fact, the speed tuning on this team is so critically important I can't begin to overemphasize. There's not a lot of wiggle room in any of these stats. The 87% crit chance works because I will have Midnight Bloom in play for an extra 16% crit chance. The second unit on the team is going to be Adventurer Ras. Adventurer Ras is wearing the Midnight Bloom because it was the only way I was able to pull off these stats. So with Midnight Bloom in play, I need to have 84% or more crit chance on all of my non-ice units and 69% crit chance or higher on my ice units. The Ras build is complex. He needs to do a significant amount of damage because Ras and Rem's S3 are going to be what clears the stage 1 mobs. He also needs to have the second highest health in the game. It's critically important he has higher health than Fire Ken. It also helps a little bit in his damage. You'll want to use the MAF damage calculator to balance out his damage simply because he's an HP scaler and it's tough to balance his attack versus his health. Now, Ken gives a health imprint to Ras because I do have a B imprint on him, and that's why I can get away with a slightly higher base health here on my Ken. Ras only had 11,800, Ken's got 12,000 health. But because of that imprint, I'm able to have Ras be the second highest health unit in the game. If you don't have an imprint on Ken, you'll have to be a little bit more careful about balancing his health. In fact, I had to use a plus 15 Durandal because my plus 27 Durandal gave him too much health. Ken needs to dish out some damage, but the most important thing is that he has 200% effect resistance so that the Wyvern cannot push him back. That is critical. The last unit on the team is going to be Rem. You'll notice she's not on a rage set. That's because you will find it incredibly difficult to clear stage 1 with a rage set. You'll need the destruction set to get the gear score, to get the stats, to get the damage, to be able to clear stage 1 and still have the power to get through stage 2. Now, one nice thing is none of the units need effectiveness because this is a guaranteed run, and that's because when Ken has vigor, which he gets from Conqueror Lilius, his defense break on his S2 has a 100% chance to stick. It ignores effect resistance. The reason that we need Ras to have the second highest health on the team is because when Lilius uses her S2, she puts a barrier on the second highest health unit. You can't have that unit be Ken, because Ken needs the Durandal procs to push him to the front of the line, so his defense break is the first thing that happens. Well, Durandal only procs when Ken is below 75% health. And if the barrier is on Ken, the first couple of Wyvern strikes won't push his health down and will keep Durandal from proccing. I know it's complex, but pay attention, you'll see how it works. Lilius gives vigor to everybody, and she S2s, which puts the barrier on Ras instead of Ken. Ras does his S3, which lays down some damage, and then Rem comes in with her S3, which should clear the mobs. If this doesn't clear the mobs, you need to re-gear. your Ras or your Rem are not strong enough. Your Ken needs to be tanky enough to take the 3 hits, and that will push him up because he doesn't have a barrier. He will immediately go into his S2, which guarantees a defense break. Lilius will S1. If it hits with Rem, this round goes faster. If it doesn't hit with Rem, it still clears. Rem will dual attack with Ras, and then Rem will take her own turn and dual attack on her own. If your Rem is a little bit stronger than mine, that's the end of the fight. If not, Lilius will S3 or S1 for a full clear. If you watch carefully, the secondary hit didn't matter. Lilius is the one that finished that fight. That's why I had her on a Rage Pen set, because I couldn't quite make my Rem strong enough on her own. Now, none of these teams are new player friendly. In fact, they're very late mid-game or late to end game at best. But this team is more friendly than the last. The first unit we're going to use is Captain RIKORIS, and he is required for this. His S2 skill Cheer is the magic of his kit. It reduces the skill cooldown on everybody on the team by 1, and that's what allows this one-shot to function, and function at a relatively fast pace. You need to tune your RIKORIS to be the fastest unit on your team without being crazy fast, but more importantly, you really need to be careful of his damage. He has to assist with clearing stage 1, but not do so much damage that Chloe overkills. I put the Water Shooter artifact on him so that he could help boost other people's damage without boosting his own. The second fastest unit on the team is going to be Fire Ken. We're running him for the same reason as we ran him on the prior team. When he has Vigor, which he gets from his S3 skill, his defense break on his S2 is a 100% chance to proc. It ignores ER, so you don't have to worry about putting any effectiveness on him or any other unit. Now, in addition to an attack buff, RIKORIS also gives a speed buff to everybody on the team, but because Ken is the last one to go in round 1, you will need Warhorn to push him up in round 2, because he will be the only one in round 2 without a speed buff, and you need him to have that Warhorn to make sure he cuts ahead of the other units. Chloe should be the second fastest unit on your team, but she still needs to be around 140 speed. If she's any slower than this, the Wyvern will cut her and it can brick the run. Chloe is our damage dealer, so give her Daydream Joker, stick your best Rage Pen set you've got on her, max that crit damage out, and go to town. I used Gift of Grace to give her 6-star because I couldn't quite pull off the damage at 5-star. I could get close, but not quite. Sinful Angelica, you need her again to have 200% ER. Now you can turn her attack buff boosting skills on to assist with the damage, but realize that once she dies, that attack buff goes away. Though I don't need the effectiveness boost, I'm going to go ahead and leave that skill on so that you can get a cleaner baseline of the stats required to clear stage 1 as well as stage 2. I needed to use Midnight Bloom to get that stat line, by the way. If you're able to do it without Midnight Bloom, you can load a damage artifact on her like Water Gun. What's fun and unique about this team is, though it is nowhere near free to play when it comes to gearing, it's free to play when it comes to units. These are units that are accessible at any time, no limited artifacts are used, and no limited units are used. Now this is what I meant by damage control. RIKORIS right out of the gate does that AoE attack and damages all the snakes. Ken will do his S3 and kill the back row. Chloe must not kill on that attack. If Chloe kills the snake with her S2, she will not use her S3, and that messes her rotation up. So you need to tune the damage just right so that you leave a sliver of health left on that snake from her S2, and then her S3 will finish it off. RIKORIS will then buff and speed buff and attack buff the entire team. Sometimes Ken will cut him and he will do that inside of the dragon phase, which actually speeds the run up a little bit. Ken uses his S3 ultimate attack and kills the last snake. Since RIKORIS reset everybody, Chloe and Ken's S2 skills are ready again. Because of Warhorn, Ken pushes up ahead of Chloe. He's able to do his S2. It gets the guaranteed defense break. Chloe does her S2, gets the guaranteed magic nail. That's 2 debuffs, so the Wyvern is guaranteed to only attack the front row. The dual attack with SINGELICA does a little bit of damage, and then Chloe comes in for her S3 and overkills substantially. So my Chloe is a little overgeared for this. You can go for a slightly lower damage gear score, but the speed tuning is rigid. You can't go up or down more than maybe 2 or 3 speed on every unit if you want this team to synergize properly. Now, the chief complaint in my last Wyvern video was that every single team featured Seaside Bologna, and especially with her being harder and harder to get, I decided to come out with a couple of teams that do not use her. First on this team is going to be Sinful Angelica. She just needs to be faster than 200 speed, but no faster than 230. If she's faster than 230, she will cut the Wyvern, and that will brick the run. I put Midnight Bloom on her to help with the stat points. You may or may not be able to pull it off without that. Now, I'm using a level 50 Clarissa and a level 50 Free Spirit Tierra, so they are very, very heavily geared to make up for the lost stats for being only level 50. If you 6-star these units, you'll be in much better shape. You'll need Warhorn to make sure that Tierra cuts to the front of the line in the second round so that she can be the first one to do her defense break. The defense break is required to succeed in this fight, so it does have an 85% success rate because of RNG, like most traditional one-shots. Now, Clarissa is going to be our substitute for Seaside Bologna. I had to stack a great deal of gear on this Clarissa, so don't be intimidated by that. You'll notice she has almost no Mola in her S2 or S3, and she's only level 50. If you address both of those things, you can go for a much lower gear level to clear. I put Daydream Joker on her for damage. Honestly, if you ran Symbol of Unity, you would probably do more damage with your Clarissa. You definitely want to pick up the EE that gives 10% damage to her S3 skill, and mine is only a plus 13% to her attack, so you could squeeze a little bit more attack on her if you max that to the plus 14% mark. The one-shot unit on this team is going to be Sigrid. Load your best pen and rage set on her, give her Daydream Joker. I like her S1 EE for extra damage. It helps when she dual attacks with Singelica. Now, Sigrid's stats are quite high, but that's par for the course with a one-shot team. If you don't mind letting the other units clean up the fight, you can get away with a little bit lower stats, especially if you 6-star your Tierra and your Clarissa. So for this one-shot team, Singelica has to go first. This gives an attack buff and a speed buff to everybody on the team. This will help units cut the snakes in the front. I've got everybody's health tuned enough where if both those snakes hit any one unit, it won't kill them. Clarissa does her S3. It has to kill the back row snake to trigger her S2, which has to clear and kill the other 2 snakes and progress you into the next phase. Now, with Free Spirit Tierra on Warhorn, Warhorn should activate here and push her in front of all the other units. That'll allow her to get her S3 off before Singelica's dual attack, and that's important because her defense break lands, and that means that S1 swipe goes into a defense break. After that, Sigrid will be ready with her S3, which should take the Wyvern down almost to death. Clarissa will clean it up with her S1 attack. That S1 attack can do substantially more damage at level 60, especially if you dump some Mola into it. This makes it a pretty stable 85% clear rate one-shot team that takes under a minute to run. Now for our second NoSSB team, I'm going to run Fairy Tale Tenebria. Note that for both of these teams you could run Seaside Bologna, but I'm trying to show examples of how she's not required to do a full auto one-shot team. Sinful Angelica needs to be the first unit to go, so I ran her at about 190 speed. She can be faster than that, no problem. You just want to make sure that she is 5% faster than the second unit on the team. Second unit on the team is going to be Fairy Tale Tenebria. She needs to be at least 180. To be honest, I think 183 is safe, but 180, it's rare that both snakes will cut her. You want to make sure she goes first so that she can land her S3 skill and then react when the snakes attack her, much in the same way that Bologna reacts when the snakes attack. I put her on Symbol of Unity because her own artifact just wasn't quite doing enough damage. Third unit is going to be Karen. Karen is my defense breaker and also a solid damage dealer. She also gives a crit chance bonus to those back 2 spots, which lets me run a easier build. I don't have to worry about gear nearly as much when I can target lower crit chance thresholds. I put her on Daydream Joker because the additional damage is helpful in killing off the Wyvern. if I put Mola in any of her skills, she would do a lot more damage and make this team a lot more consistent and put a lot less pressure on Sigrid to do the full clear. You'll also note she is level 50, so if you level 60 her and put Mola in her skills, your Sigrid won't need to look like this. You can run a much lower gear score Sigrid, and in fact for this fight this Sigrid is very over geared. I think you'll see when she does her S3 and clears, it way overkills the Wyvern. So of all the teams we've gone over so far, this is probably the lowest gear score, the lowest gear requirement team. So Sinful Angelica starts off the fight with a speed buff and an attack buff. This will give Fairy Tail Tenebria the speed to get ahead of the snakes.
Don't you think?
Even though her effectiveness may not be full, it usually tags at least one snake with Redirect Provoke, and that's all you need is for a redirected Provoke snake to attack. She kills and pushes phase. Nobody else has taken turns yet, so everybody else has the speed and attack buffs on them still. Because Karen still has the speed buff, she will cut in front of Sinful Angelica, deliver a defense break. If the defense break does not stick, the run fails. It is a 15% one-shot, as was the previous. Sinful Angelica dual attacks with Sigrid. Fairy Tail Tenebria gets a S1 swipe in, and then Sigrid clears the fight. If Karen was max mullet in level 60, it would greatly reduce the amount of gear you needed on Sigrid to clear this fight. Under a 1 minute run, or roughly a 1 minute run with an 85% clear rate, very solid non-SSB one-shot team. Now building a one-shot team without Sinful Angelica is far more difficult. There are several stable fast clears. I will link some in the description where you can use General Purgus or even Mui to do this. But if you truly want a one-shot team, this team does it without Sinful Angelica. It looks a little janky, but it is relatively stable. I would say probably 85 to 90% clear rate. We're going to start with Ian, who you will notice is level 50. I put Song of Stars on him to give him some use outside of Phase 1. What Ian is used for is his S2 skill is an attack buff to the entire team. So he's our source of attack buff. He needs to be tanky enough to take the blasts from the Wyvern and not die. So put a little bit of health on him, give him 65% effectiveness. You can run the Miss Confile artifact on him to make it an even more stable run, but people lose their minds in the comments when I use limited artifacts in these guides, so I'm just going to run him on Song of Stars to give a little bit more damage, chance of a little bit more damage from this unit. His stats really don't matter that much. Just speed tune him to be the fastest unit on the team, between 200 and 230 speed, and give him the effectiveness and an artifact that lets him do something. Ras is going to assist us with clearing the stage 1 mobs. He doesn't need a ton of stats, but you do want to give him the Warhorn artifact so that he can cut and have a chance to get his defense break off at the start. The reason I'm using Ras is because I need his damage to assist me with clearing the stage 1 mobs using Bologna, because Bologna is not going to have her own artifact on. I'm going to run this Otherworldly Machine artifact. You could also run Symbol of Unity, exact same bonus, 16% damage bonus from Symbol of Unity as well as from Otherworldly Machine. You could also run Rangar's Drink, but again I'm trying to avoid using limited artifacts. Bologna needs to have decent amount of Mola in her S2 and S3. Her S1 doesn't really matter, and she's got to be built to do enough damage to clear the snakes, and she has to be built relatively fast. Without the presence of Singelica, we have no speed buff, so you got to make sure she's fast enough to clear the stage 1 snakes before they attack. It's important her S3 goes off before they attack so that her focus bar is full. Traditional DPS Rem, 130 speed or more is ideal on Rem so that the Wyvern doesn't cut her, but mostly you're focusing on penetration and damage. So Ian does his S3, gives everybody an attack buff, and he does his S2, which does a little bit of chip damage. Ras comes in with his S3, does a little bit more chip damage, and that should be enough that when Bellona does her S3, it gets the snakes right down to the brink of death. And then all we need is 2 snakes to hit to trigger Bellona's passive. And once those 2 snakes hit, Bellona pops off with her S2 and clears the phase. As you can see, she is way over geared for this. She did substantially more damage than was required, so you can build her with a lower gear requirement. Ian takes some hits, and because he has no resistance, it pushes him back. If you're going to run him on the Misconfile artifact, you want to stack 200% ER on him as well, which you might be able to pull off if you level 60 him. I couldn't get the ER and keep Ian alive from the Snake Blasts. Now, as long as one of the defense breaks from either Ras's S2 or Rem's S1 triggers, you should be able to full clear. You get a 3rd chance for a defense break here, and as you can see, Rem is going to clear just fine on her own. You need Ian's Song of Stars to proc for the 2nd set of debuffs. This is not a super hyper stable team. I would give it about a 70 to 75% clear rate, but it does give you a one-shot team without Sinful Angelica. I will put a link in the description for another team that, though it's not a true one-shot, it has a much more stable clear rate, and you'll probably get more kills per hour using that team. Speaking of stability, this is my favorite team. This is the one that I leave up for normal purposes, only re-gearing to the NoFail team when there's an unequip event. This team has, I would say, about a 95 to 97% clear rate. First on the team is my Wyvern SINGELICA. That's right, I made a second one specifically for Wyvern because I wanted to have a fast one for RTA. And SINGELICA cannot be faster than 230 speed, or she will cut the Wyvern and brick the runs. But the nice thing is, she needs very little. She needs 200% effect resistance and to be the fastest unit on your team without being faster than 230 speed. I gave her the Water Gun artifact to help boost everybody's damage. You could also run Card of Small Miracles, or you could even run Midnight Bloom and lower the stat requirement for your other units by giving everybody 16% crit chance. And this is my Wyvern SSB. Because I wanted to have a lifesteal SSB for RTA and Guild Wars, I made a second SSB when the custom banner came around. She doesn't have a lot of Mola in her S3, so her stats are overinflated. If you max out her S3, you can go for a much lower stat requirement. I'm running Otherworldly Machine on her. It does the same bonus damage as Symbol of Unity. Ragnar's Drink would be the best artifact, but I'm trying to avoid guides that use artifacts that require plus 30, especially limited ones. So, like I said, max out her S2 and S3, you can hit a much lower stat requirement for this build. 168 speed works on her simply because she'll get a speed buff from SINGELICA, and that will let her cut up to the 180 speed mark. The next unit on my team is Camilla. Now, Camilla looks terrible, but she's actually a work of art. My fribbles almost caught fire building this Camilla. You can build your Camilla on Rage Pen set and get a more stable, quicker clear, because she'll assist with damage. But mine is built specifically so that she has 200% effect resistance for the Fire Expedition and 85% effectiveness for the also for the Fire Expeditions and for Advent events. But there's absolutely no reason why you can't build her to contribute to damage. She needs to be on the Warhorn artifact. She will have a speed buff from SINGELICA, and with the speed buff and the Warhorn buff, she will push up from her rather slow speed position to go first before SINGELICA even takes a turn. If SINGELICA goes before her in the Wyvern phase, then you need to slow SINGELICA down or speed Camilla up a little bit, but make sure Camilla doesn't go before Seaside Bellona. The last unit on the team is Rem. A perfect Rem is going to be about 130 speed or faster, and the reason for that is with the speed buff at 130 speed, she will cut the Wyvern and get her attack off before the Wyvern does a second set of attacks. Makes the run much faster. Put her on a Rage and Pen set, give her Daydream Joker. You only need to have Mola in her S1. This is my Wyvern Rem. My PvP Rem is fully Mola'd. To start this fight, you make sure that Rem and Camilla's skills are off. That's important. If they're on, the run will not work. When the run starts, SINGELICA S3s, attack buff and speed buff to everybody. That will allow SSB to cut both of the snakes. She will do her S3, which lays down a significant chunk of damage and gives her 3 focus. 4 focus from the first hit, 5 focus from the second hit. She'll react with her S2. This clears the phase and lets you push on to the Wyvern stage. The Wyvern, as long as it goes first, which is why you can't be faster than 230, the Wyvern will always hit the front unit with its first attack. Being immortal, SINGELICA takes it. Camilla, with her skills off, will dual attack because of the attack buff. Camilla has a 50% defense break, and each time Rem attacks is another 50% defense break. She'll dual attack with SINGELICA, then she'll attack on her own. As long as one of the first 5 defense breaks lands, this fight will clear, which is a lot of coin tosses to lose in a row, and that's what gives this team its incredible stability while maintaining a very high speed. I hope at least one of these teams helps you make bank with your Wyvern hunt buffs. I'll put links in the description to other options for farming Wyvern. If you have any questions, ask them in the comments section, and I really hope you enjoyed this content. If you did, consider giving the video a like and maybe a subscribe. Have a great weekend.